This is not just a headline, it's not clickbait, it's not drama for views, this is real. This is happening, and it's far bigger than just one person. I am officially taking on the judge presiding over the Blake Lively subpoena case, not out of recklessness, not out of ego, but out of necessity. Because when you see abuse of legal power, when you see intimidation being dressed up as justice, and when creators, commentators, and journalists are being dragged into court simply for speaking, something has to be done, and if no one else is willing to do it, then I will. The truth is, this isn't just about Blake Lively. It's not just about Ryan Reynolds. It's not even just about one Hollywood lawsuit. This is about how the court system, one that's supposed to protect truth, transparency, and fairness, is being used as a weapon. A tool, a sledgehammer, not to uncover justice, but to suppress it, to silence, to punish, to make examples out of people who had the audacity to speak. When I received word that I was being named in connection to this legal battle, I already knew what it meant. I had seen this movie before. A celebrity caught in a PR crisis turns to the legal system not for accountability, but for damage control. Suddenly, people who report, react, or comment on the story are under attack, not because they lied, but because they exposed too much of the truth, and worse, some judges allow it, they enable it. Whether through passive rulings, silence, or procedural games behind the scenes, they let celebrities and their powerful attorneys turn the courtroom into a battlefield against critics. It's all part of the same strategy: silence your opposition, not by arguing against them, but by burying them in paperwork, fear, and endless legal maneuvers. Well, not this time. Because this time I'm fighting back. I've hired my own lawyers. I've launched my own legal strategy, and yes, I am challenging the court itself. I am demanding that this judge be held accountable for what happens under their watch. Because if the justice system can be hijacked by fame and influence, then it is no longer justice at all. This video is just the beginning. We are pulling back the curtain on everything: the subpoenas, the secret court filings, the silence from the bench, the whispers of favoritism, the weaponization of the law itself. And you're going to see exactly what we're up against. If you care about free speech, if you care about press freedom, if you care about fairness and truth, then this fight is your fight too. Because when the courts stop protecting people and start protecting power, it's up to us to speak louder than ever before. Let's begin. It all began with what looked like a subtle headline. Blake Lively's legal team was reportedly preparing subpoenas targeting people not typically involved in the center of a lawsuit: creators, journalists, commentators, and online investigators. And at first glance, it looked like another story about a celebrity trying to defend their name. But quickly, this story turned into something much darker, more manipulative, and honestly more dangerous. When I received notice that I was a potential target of discovery in this case, I wasn't surprised. I was disgusted. Why? Because the information being requested had nothing to do with actual defamation or fact-checking. It had everything to do with shutting down commentary that was inconvenient, uncomfortable, or critical of people in power. Let's be clear, this wasn't about facts, it was about fear. The documents made it clear. Lively's legal team was attempting to use the court system to fish for private communications, content strategies, editorial notes, and even information about anonymous sources. Think about that: anonymous sources, the lifeblood of journalistic freedom, being hunted down by a team hired by a celebrity who didn't like the story being told about her. If that doesn't shake you, it should. This was not a civil procedure, this was a warning shot. The most frustrating part: the judge in the case didn't initially appear to push back. In fact, there were moments when it seemed the court was entertaining these overreaching tactics as if they were normal, as if asking content creators to give up their sources, files, and communications was just business as usual. That's when I knew I had to speak up, and more than that, I had to fight back. This judge, whether knowingly or not, became part of a broader problem: the problem of legal intimidation. The kind where legal mechanisms meant to protect truth and justice are weaponized to silence those on the outside of power. I wasn't going to sit quietly while my work, my rights, and my freedom to speak were tossed into legal crossfire. So what did I do? I consulted with a team of lawyers, seasoned professionals who understood that this case was about much more than just a defamation claim. This was about precedent, about public interest, about the First Amendment, and whether or not it still means something in a world where billionaires and movie stars don't want you talking about their mistakes. Together we prepared a response, not just a legal filing, but a strategic blueprint. We were not going to roll over. We were not going to comply with overbroad demands that had no legal justification. And we were going to challenge any court order that allowed this to continue unchecked. That's where things got tense. Once our team filed motions to quash and invoked the shield protections that many journalists rely on, the atmosphere shifted. Suddenly, what looked like a one-sided legal power play turned into a legitimate standoff. The court was now being asked to weigh a real constitutional question: does the right to privacy, the right to free speech, and the public's right to know outweigh the celebrity's desire to control a narrative? And more importantly, can a judge allow that kind of legal overreach without consequences? I was warned quietly that pushing back could come with risks, retaliation, smear campaigns, potential penalties, but let me be perfectly honest, I'm not afraid of that. What I fear more is living in a world where this kind of thing becomes routine, where creators and commentators censor themselves out of fear, not ethics. That's not journalism, that's not free speech, that's coercion. And no judge, celebrity connected or otherwise, is above accountability for allowing it to happen. We laid out our argument that these subpoenas were vague, harassing, and designed more to intimidate than to obtain relevant evidence. We presented precedent constitutional protections and pointed out that this case was already attracting public scrutiny. If the court went along with this fishing expedition, it wouldn't just harm me, it would set a dangerous standard for everyone. Now here's where things got even more complicated. Behind the scenes, we started hearing whispers that the judge had previously ruled in favor of other high-profile celebrities in similar cases, that there was a pattern of giving wide latitude to fame, while downplaying the rights of independent reporters and creators, that rulings were often sealed and transparency was limited. At that point, I realized this fight wasn't just about stopping a subpoena. It was about exposing how these legal tactics were being used repeatedly silently to keep people from uncovering the truth. So we expanded the strategy. We filed for full transparency of the hearing process. We requested a public record of all interactions and evidence, not only to protect ourselves, but to ensure this story could be told beginning to end. We also alerted major press organizations and legal rights groups, because this wasn't just about me anymore, it was about every person watching this case, wondering if the courts would protect their rights when it mattered most. And we began preparing the public-facing side of this case: documentation, timelines, evidence. If we were going to be dragged into court, we were going to bring the truth with us, loudly, boldly, and legally, because sometimes the only way to confront intimidation is with visibility. You don't hide from it, you expose it. And that's exactly what we're doing next. While most people only see the surface of these celebrity lawsuits, legal filings, public statements, maybe a few headlines, the reality underneath is far more calculated. What we're witnessing in this case with Blake Lively and her legal team is not some isolated dispute. It fits a much bigger pattern, a playbook really. One that's been quietly used by many public figures to suppress criticism, steer media narratives, and use the courts not as instruments of justice but as tools of silence. And here's the truth: most people don't know these tactics work. Not because they're always legally sound, but because they're exhausting, expensive, and terrifying for the people on the receiving end. This isn't about who's right or wrong in the public eye. This is about how power can be used to drown out the truth before it ever gets heard. Take a look at the typical structure of these celebrity-driven legal moves. First, a vague or overreaching subpoena is issued. It demands everything: communications, editorial notes, private DMs, emails, videos, even unpublished drafts. The idea is to overwhelm, not just to gather information, but to make the process itself a punishment. Second, the demands are backed up by big legal threats, contempt, court orders, penalties, financial ruin. And third, they count on silence. They expect the target to give up quietly, to retreat, to delete their content, and never speak out again, because fighting back is costly and most people can't afford it. That's where the legal system becomes part of the pressure. If a judge allows these subpoenas to stand, or worse, enforces them with minimal pushback, it emboldens the tactic even more. Suddenly, what was supposed to be a fair process becomes a fear factory. And celebrities armed with influence and a carefully managed PR machine control the entire narrative. That's the hidden pattern, and I'm calling it out. Blake Lively's case follows every one of these steps. It's textbook. Her team didn't just ask for relevant information tied directly to a legal claim, they went further. They cast a wide net, trying to see what they could catch. Why? Because even if nothing damning is found, the process itself is a punishment. The chilling effect, devastating. But here's the problem with that strategy: now it's not going to work on me, because I've seen this before. I've talked to other creators who've faced similar tactics, from actors, producers, even political figures. They all describe the same pattern: legal threats first, then silence, then stories disappear. Videos get taken down, channels stop posting. Why? Because they're scared. And who can blame them? The system wasn't built to protect creators from being sued by multimillionaires. But we are in a new era now. People are watching. Audiences care. Viewers see through the smoke. That's why I decided to keep my case public. I'm documenting everything, not just for my own defense, but so other creators know what to look out for. This isn't just about celebrity gossip or Hollywood drama. This is about precedent. This is about standing up to a legal playbook designed to silence anyone who tells uncomfortable truths. Let's talk about the psychological aspect of this too. Legal intimidation doesn't just wear you down financially, it gets in your head. It makes you second-guess every word. You say every opinion you publish. You start wondering, am I next? Will they come after me if I say this, if I post this? That's not freedom. That's fear. And that fear is exactly what some of these celebrity legal teams count on. Look at what's happened in other high-profile cases. Whistleblowers silenced. Journalists pressured, stories mysteriously vanish, creators privately admit they stopped covering certain topics not because they were wrong, but because the threat wasn't worth the risk. That's what Blake Lively's team was counting on. But they miscalculated badly. They thought I'd be afraid, that I'd go quiet, that the paperwork alone would be enough to break me down. But what they didn't realize is that I was already prepared for this fight. I've studied their tactics, I know how the machine works, and now I'm turning the spotlight right back onto them because let's be very clear, subpoenas are not shields. They're swords. And when they're used improperly, they violate the very principles they claim to protect. The court is supposed to be a place of fairness, not a playground for public relations stunts disguised as legal processes. So what are we doing differently? We're not just fighting back legally, we're fighting back publicly. We're making every filing, every response, and every court date visible. We're exposing not only what they're doing, but how they're doing it. And we're pulling in support not just lawyers, but civil rights experts, digital rights advocates, press, freedom organizations, and yes, our audience. Because the one thing these kinds of campaigns hate more than legal pushback is attention. They don't want people to ask questions like, why is Blake Lively's team so interested in behind-the-scenes creator content? Why are they demanding information from people who weren't even parties in the case? Why is the judge allowing this kind of fishing expedition in the first place? And most importantly, who benefits from keeping all this out of public view? We're not just answering those questions. We're making sure everyone else asks them too. This isn't just my battle anymore. It's a spotlight on a broken system. And the more they push, the more the world sees what they're trying to hide. There's no going back now. I've committed to this, and the truth, it's already unraveling. The case that was supposed to silence is starting to speak louder than any of them expected. Because when you fight back publicly and you fight with facts, you don't just defend yourself. You expose the entire system. At the center of every courtroom drama, beneath all the media headlines and legal jargon, is one person whose decisions can change everything. The judge, the robes, the gavel, the authority. Judges are supposed to be neutral, impartial, guardians of the rule of law. But what happens when the person tasked with ensuring fairness begins to enable a system that seems anything but? This question is no longer theoretical in the case involving Blake Lively's legal efforts against creators like myself. Because as much as we can focus on the actions of her attorneys, the pressure campaigns, or the subpoenas sent to people who had nothing to do with her original legal conflict, it all eventually falls in the lap of the court. The judge makes the call. The judge decides whether this ends quickly or spirals into something much darker. And here's what's troubling so far: the signs haven't been encouraging. Let's break it down. When Blake Lively's legal team issued broad subpoenas to multiple content creators, requesting documents and communications that had little or nothing to do with the direct claims in her lawsuit, it raised red flags for nearly everyone watching closely. These weren't narrowly tailored subpoenas targeting specific defamatory content. They were sweeping demands that looked more like an attempt to chill speech than seek justice. A responsible judge seeing that should have asked, is this necessary? Is this fair? Is this legal? But instead what we witnessed was passivity, acceptance, a willingness to entertain the argument that because someone commented on a celebrity in a public forum, they forfeited their right to privacy, editorial independence, and even protection of anonymous sources. That's not just concerning, it's dangerous. Judges have an incredible responsibility in high-profile cases, not just to the people in their courtroom, but to the public watching from the outside. Because when the legal system starts to look like it bends for fame or money, confidence in justice begins to crumble. And if a judge allows tactics that would never fly in a case involving ordinary citizens, simply because a well-known name is on the filing, what message does that send? This isn't about attacking the judge personally. Let's be clear, this is about accountability for the decisions made under the authority of the court. Decisions that have consequences far beyond one case, one creator, or one celebrity. Because if this court upholds a system that allows public figures to silence commentary with overreaching subpoenas, then every other creator out there, whether they talk about pop culture, politics, or public figures just got put on notice, and it's not just hypothetical. We've already seen how other judges in similar cases have been caught in uncomfortable positions. Some have denied motions to quash subpoenas outright only to be overruled later by appellate courts, who recognize the damage to free speech. Others have quietly sealed rulings that would have caused public backlash if released. Some judges have even gone so far as to limit public access to proceedings entirely, when celebrity reputations were on the line. Why, that's the question we're asking now. Why is this judge allowing these tactics? Is there pressure behind the scenes? Is there an unwillingness to challenge high-profile attorneys? Is this a case of procedural laziness or something more? Deliberate, because it's not just what's allowed that matters, it's what's ignored. So far, this judge has declined to fully restrict Lively's team from seeking wide-ranging discovery, has not intervened when creators have filed objections about privacy or journalistic protections, and worse, has appeared reluctant to acknowledge the public interest aspect of the case. That's a huge problem, because this isn't just a private legal dispute, it's a battle with constitutional implications. Now here's where things get even more intense. When we filed our objections supported by legal precedent, press freedom arguments, and digital rights case law, we expected a serious review, a hearing, a ruling that would either uphold or reject our claims. Instead, we were met with delay, silence, and behind closed doors, quiet negotiations were reportedly taking place between the court and legal teams on both sides. Let that sink in. This is supposed to be a public process, one that serves transparency and fairness, but decisions are being made out of sight. Motions are being stalled, and the people most impacted, those being targeted by these subpoenas, are left in limbo. So now we have to ask, is this court being used to protect a celebrity from public scrutiny? Because here's the reality. If this were a case involving an ordinary plaintiff, a regular citizen, no judge would tolerate this level of overreach. Discovery would be limited, relevance would be enforced, privacy rights would be respected. But when a Hollywood star is involved, suddenly the rules become blurry, the court becomes cautious, and those caught in the crossfire are expected to bear the burden of a flawed process. That's not justice, that's privilege in a black robe. This is why public pressure matters. This is why creators and independent media need to speak out. Because when judges see that people are watching, that the public is paying attention, they are more likely to consider the wider impact of their decisions. And if this judge refuses to recognize the threat these subpoenas pose to free expression, we will escalate to higher courts, to oversight bodies, and to the court of public opinion. This moment isn't just about whether or not a subpoena stands. It's about whether or not we allow courts to become tools of suppression, whether we let influence dictate due process, and whether a judge can sit silently while creators, journalists, and the truth itself are dragged into legal warfare they never asked for. We won't be silent, and we won't back down. The next hearing is coming, and when it does, we'll be there with filings, with facts, and with the public behind us. Because if this court wants to protect celebrity power more than citizen rights, we'll make sure the world sees it. When I first received notice that I was being name targeted and dragged into the legal orbit of Blake Lively's case, I knew immediately that this wasn't just about one subpoena. It wasn't just about me. It was a warning shot to everyone who dares to speak truth to power, to everyone who dares to challenge a public figure's carefully crafted narrative, and to everyone who refuses to bow to the pressure of influence disguised as justice. But I refuse to run, I refuse to hide, and more than that, I refuse to be silent. What began as a legal tactic meant to intimidate has now evolved into a public reckoning. The cracks in the system are showing, the public sees it, legal experts see it. Even creators who once stayed quiet are now coming forward to say this has gone too far, because this case has never been about one person, it's about precedent. About whether or not celebrities can use their wealth and platform to weaponize the court system against free speech. About whether the judiciary will stand firm or fold under the weight of Hollywood as influence. And let's be very clear, this judge now has a choice. The world is watching, and the longer the silence continues, the louder the outrage will become. The more the court stalls, the more creators, legal advocates, and everyday citizens will demand answers. Transparency isn't optional when the stakes are this high. The moment the legal system becomes a tool for fear instead of fairness, we all lose something that can't be recovered: trust. But the truth, I still believe in justice. I still believe in the power of the people to push back. And I believe that this moment, this legal fight, this public fight, is only the beginning of something far bigger, because for every subpoena they send, we'll answer with exposure. For every attempt to silence, we'll raise our voices louder. For every legal maneuver meant to scare us into submission, we'll respond with truth, with courage, and with unshakable resolve. So here's where we stand now. I am continuing this fight. I will not withdraw, I will not settle in silence, and I will take this as far as it needs to go. Because creators deserve protection, speech deserves safeguarding, and no one, no matter how rich or famous, should be allowed to manipulate the courts for personal gain. If you're watching this and you feel helpless, don't share this, speak up, keep asking questions. Because when enough of us demand answers, even the loudest Hollywood power plays start to crumble. We've exposed their tactics, we've revealed their legal strategies, and now we're turning the spotlight toward the courtroom itself. Let justice speak for the people, and let the judge know we're not afraid. We're just getting started.